Are you having trouble finishing tests on time? Are you struggling with a particular test format? Taking tests can be challenging for many students, but the following strategies can help to make tests feel more manageable. When taking any test, the first step is to prepare before the test. You will want to find out the format of the test. Is it going to be multiple choice or an essay test? You will also want to know what course content will be on the test. Which chapters or concepts will the test cover? Even if your professor doesn't tell you ahead of time, you may still be able to ask. If they don't want to tell you, it is probably best to study everything that you've learned since the last test and review what was on the previous test just in case. Getting as much information about the test in advance will help you prepare for and know what to study for the test. You should also talk to your professor before the test. If you are confused about or struggling to understand a concept, any questions that you can get answered before the test can only help you when you are taking it. You may also find it beneficial to spread out your studying so that you are starting to create study tools and review the material you are learning each week rather than waiting until a couple of days before the test to begin this process. This could be as simple as studying for 15 minutes after each class. This way, you will be more familiar with the material as you get closer to the test and will already have the study guides or flashcards you need to study. Check out our videos on study strategies and how to spread out assignments to get more ideas about how to prepare for your test. The first thing you should do when you get the test is to read the directions carefully. Then you should preview the test. Find out how many questions are on the test and how many points each question is worth. This can help you determine how you should structure your time during the test. You should prioritize the questions that are worth more points and will take you longer to complete. It can be really helpful to preview these questions and identify which questions you can answer right away and which questions you feel most confident answering. Start with these questions rather than on a question you don't know to help build your confidence for the test. It could help to set a time frame for how long you should spend on a particular section or question to ensure that you are pacing yourself effectively. For example, if there are 20 multiple choice questions and 5 short answer questions during a 50-minute test, you may want to give yourself 15 to 20 minutes to do the multiple choice questions and 5 to 6 minutes to do each short answer question. This way, you would be able to get through the test in the amount of time you have and may even have a few minutes at the end to review everything. Unless there are questions you need to answer to move on to another section, you should skip questions that are holding you up or are confusing and go back to them at the end. Also, try not to change your answers unless you're absolutely sure that you got something wrong. Oftentimes, students will make more mistakes because they second guess themselves than if they had left the answer as it was originally. It's important to trust your gut. Your first instinct is often the best. When you're reading a specific question, it can be helpful to break it down to identify what you really need to answer. Underline or circle the key terms or phrases within the question to be sure you know what information you need to address. You may also want to try rephrasing the question to make sure you fully understand what is being asked. Now let's talk about specific kinds of questions that you may see on your tests. For true-false tests, remember that in order for the question to be true, it has to be 100% true. Try to evaluate the statement. What do you know about this information? Is there a way to make this statement false? If you can't figure out a way for this statement to be false, then it must be true. Try to watch out for qualifiers and absolutes. If the question uses qualifiers, such as often, sometimes, or usually, this statement is likely true. But if the question uses absolutes, such as always, never, or none, the statement is typically false. These can be tricky questions to identify, but this is why it is helpful to read the questions carefully and identify the key terms. If you are worried about forgetting information during a multiple choice test, you may find it helpful to do a quick brain dump of the concepts you need to remember for the test on some scrap paper or on the back of the test when you first get it. As you begin the test, again, it will be really important to underline key words or terms in the question and to rephrase the question to make sure you understand it. It's important to spend more time with the question than the answers because it can be easy to get confused or overwhelmed by which choice is correct. It is helpful to start by covering up the answers and treat the question like a fill-in-the-blank or short answer question. If you can think of the answer to the question without looking at the options and then the answer you came up with is listed, you'll know that this is the correct answer. Another classic approach to multiple choice questions is the process of elimination. If you can narrow down the options to two choices, you will likely have an easier time choosing the correct answer. You should avoid unfamiliar answers because most of the time, if you don't remember that answer, it's not correct and probably not something you studied yet. You can usually eliminate similar answers, and if two answers are exact opposite, one is likely the correct answer. You should try to choose the best and most complete answer, and you may want to consider an umbrella answer. This would be an answer that addresses information from other answers. Try to compare the differences between the options and always refer back to the question to help you identify what it is really asking. Again, the important thing with multiple choice questions is to trust your gut. If you have open-ended questions, whether short answer or long answer questions, it is helpful to just start with what you know. Even if you're not 100% sure of the answer, when you start writing, more information usually will start to flow. Sometimes it's just about getting started, even when you feel stuck at first. For essay tests, it can be helpful to pre-write an essay during the study process, especially if you get the prompt question ahead of time. If you don't, you could try to create your own prompt question to practice with. Once you get to the test, read the question carefully to make sure you have a clear understanding of what it's asking. Again, you should underline the important points in the question. Once you've done this, give yourself a couple of minutes to create an outline or plan for the essay. This can even be just a topic and a few bullet points about what you want to discuss. Having a plan will help you move through your answer more quickly and effectively while ensuring that your thought process is still organized. You should remember to plan out your time based on the number and difficulty of the questions. Are there more challenging questions that will take more time? It can help to start with the topic you are more comfortable with to build your confidence. When you are writing, it is also important to make sure that your essay is concise and organized. If you feel really stressed out when you are preparing for or taking tests, especially to the point where you are blanking on information during the test, your stomach feels off, you feel overwhelmed or are having trouble breathing, you may be experiencing some test anxiety. This is a very understandable reaction that many students experience. If you're having any type of test anxiety, you might find it helpful to check out our video about how to manage test anxiety symptoms. If you want to talk through these or other strategies about test taking or test anxiety, you can set up an appointment with an LSS staff member. You can also find more study tool videos and workshops on our website.